I think we were talking about the nature of reality. We
Yeah,
can start there.
I magically grew my beard like in just a few seconds. Now I
Yeah,
have more of a beard.
yeah, yeah. If you could lead us to the point that we were sort of hanging on.
I think what we were talking about last time was how my journey had come from this really strong. I don't think I'm unique in that. I think a lot of people have that this strong urge to figure out what am I supposed to do? What is it that I'm supposed to get somehow? Because there's this feeling inside of you that needs fulfillment, that believes that if I can just get this one thing right, if I can just find the the unlimited amounts of money, the perfect woman, the perfect career, the my calling in life, if I could just find that, then there's something inside of us we believe will be fulfilled. Just like we were talking now before, we were saying that information. One of the problem is that before it was much easier, right? You didn't have many occupations to choose from. You choose the ones your father had or your mother had, and then you kind of went to do that, and then yeah, that was it. Kind of, you didn't really have to figure out so much stuff. Now you have a gazillion options, and when it comes to spirituality and what happens in our minds and all of that, I think it's a real problem because there's just too much information and there's too many options, and then we get caught up in believing that it's actually important to figure things out. Because in the end, I believe that experience trumps knowledge any
Mm,
time of the day,
mm.
like always,
Oh,
always.
I find it interesting because we've both got a background in a sort of an Eastern perspective of reality, and I find it interesting that you bring that point up because I call them information gatherers,
Yeah,
and there are millions and especially with information instantaneously. So something that you and I have experienced, and I think we've already motioned to the idea that you could access this consciousness instantly. Also, there might be a benefit to progressively acquiring this awareness, understanding there's sort of like your consciousness is giving you what you need right now if you sort of accept that, or the universe will provide for me. That's a little bit sort of like a blanket sort of statement that I'm a little my personality gets a little concerned when people use that, but hey, look, it works that way. And then just as you're the powerful manifester of the bag of money that popped up in front of you when you opened your front door, you're also a manifester of all things that you do not want in your life somehow materialize instantaneously, a lot faster than the things that you want. And so it's just all this sort of like calibration of understanding a deeper synchronicity. And when we talk about information, like this is fundamental for when I get in front of scientists per se. And so they have a language, and I mean, there's so many throwaway words right now to identify what is all things consciousness. What does that mean? Which cannot be measured by some scientific formula per se. Yet we have this sort of information. What were you going to say?
no, I just
No, I
clear
was just going
myself.
to say because
Yeah,
there's degrees of this variable, right? So for me, all things is the Wu Ji, the mother of the mother of all things, the Tao. And so
yeah,
to sort of like deconstruct that, so something could be tangible, and we refer to what you talk an experience, an experiential moment that is validated within the individual. That would be they're feeling it, because that's a great measure. It sort of takes all the thinking out of it, because we were notioning that, hey, look, you're thinking too much, you're gathering too much information. I always teach people, when you feel it, and I help them acquire a certain state of feeling, it evokes a specific brainwave that accesses this so-called consciousness. And these are sort of like fundamental ways that I can help you measure your experience and validate it by affecting change in a 3D reality at that point of knowing. And when you feel this point of knowing, it's a state. And over all these years I've been doing this, that brainwave state happens to be identifiable with an actual experience, whether it's a physical healing, a manifestation, internal magic. It comes from this cultivating that we use within Taoism, and it's measurable, and you can actually know when you're acquiring this state. And I think definitely Martin's not so obsessed with the internal alchemy more than being whole in his expression of his consciousness right now. But for all intensive purposes, someone who was acquiring something that is a little bit more focused on being able to identify consciousness and identify the state that you're in that will be repeatable, because that's really part of it. Martin gets into the state that's just now, and he knows it, and he's experienced it throughout his life. And even I think from the conversation we've had so far, it's still not 100% completely like validating all things for you, or would you say that you're?
I think I love listening to you, because it's when I listen to people, I try to not think of my response. I try to just see, am I reacting towards what people are saying? So I take away what I call distortion. When I'm in
Yeah,
consultation calls, I never try to solve people's problems. I just listen to them, and I do
yeah,
that and make sure that I'm not reacting. And then I just kind of blank my mind, and stuff just comes out. And usually it's the right thing when I don't get in the way. I literally, when I make videos for YouTube, I cannot rehearse. If I
yeah.
try to do it
No,
one time
no.
and then do that thing again, I get so confused, because, oh,
Oh, yeah,
I said that thing that was good. No, what was it I said?
yeah, yeah.
I just have to just do it, and then it works. So in regards to what you were saying, like not being completely cemented, there are whatever you call it, that there are certain things. I am anally retentive with my practice. I mean, I really mean that, and in the way that, how you just get so focused on one thing, almost autistic. I only have one thing that I want to do in my practice, and there's only one thing, which is why I said in the beginning, I'm not a Buddhist. I mean, I was raised as an strict atheist, and I still see myself in a way as an atheist, but I guess atheist means believing in nothing. So I yeah, that's difficult, but still, my point is that I think belief is getting in the way for a lot of people. And for me, when I
Mm,
started, I was looking so much. I look for make money. What should I spend the money on? What should I do with my life? Who should I marry? Who should I become? Who should I be? I want to leave a legacy, and I had this strong sense of I needed to do something. And when I started meditating, I found, okay, wait, no, those were wrong things. I need to help more people. I need to heal more people. I need to have more spiritual experience. And I think after I had that, I talked about my first in the Mahasi tradition. They call it the first level of enlightenment, which would be Sotapanna, like the stream entry. After that, I've constantly had this energy running up and down my spine. I don't call it energy; I call it tension. Literally since 2010, every single minute of my entire life, except for a few moments, well, actually, except for when I'm in a non-centric state or non-dual state, because then that disappears. Except for that, I have it all the time. I have it now. I feel it pushing up my spine, and it's not a pleasant thing to have all the time. People think, "Oh, I wish I could feel that." I have like at night, I'll wake up sometimes being stretched in an arc because it's kind of stuck here sometimes. So constantly I have that going up and down. And what that has done, which makes my perspective a little bit different, is that I could have thought, oh, you know what? I need to become a master
mm.
manifester or a master healer. And I think, considering how much stuff I was experiencing, how all of this stuff came easily, it would have been very easy to just grab that and say, yes, that's my new goal. But that would have been the same thing. Then I just need to help more people. I need to manifest more. So it's just, for me, I'm not negating, say, that those things don't exist. And if I would have cancer, which I hope I don't, then obviously I would do everything I can to heal myself. But I am anally retentive and autistically focused, in the sense that I only focus on the distortion. I only focus on this thing where I believe, not believe, where I feel there's a me here, and I'm pushing against something outside. Now, the funny thing is, when I stop doing that, automatically, I think that's what many people describe when they do healing, when they do channeling. That's what they do. They get out of the way. I just don't focus on the effects of that. I just focus on the distortion, which means that
Mm.
I could have spent all this time discussing, okay, what is consciousness? And you talk to the scientist, or what is healing? Is it true? Can it happen? Can I do this? Can I do that? And I would have wasted thousands of hours that I could have just spent practicing instead. So for me, and I think that's my people think of me and they say, oh, you went to become a monk and you left everything and you were away I traveled for 8 years and you left your girlfriend and I mean, I could have grabbed onto so many things that would have been me, but the biggest thing I did was not getting caught up in all those things. I believe that's if I have one superpower, it's the fact that I experienced all this, that I've seen all this, that I had, I mean, I accidentally drowned myself one time. So I had a near-death experience. I could have easily taken that experience. And when that happened, that was like, oh, wow, okay, now I experience it. I'm going to make this into a thing. But since I can always see this, okay, what am I supposed to get? And I've been extremely focused on getting things. I realize somehow that it doesn't matter what I get. It's always going to be more. And I'm not saying they're not true, they're not worthwhile pursuing, because they really are. I mean, if you can heal someone, that's an incredible thing. I mean, that would be amazing. But it's just not what I'm focused on. I'm just focused on this narrow little thing, which is the distortion, or as in Buddhism, they call that suffering or dukkha. So I am extremely Buddhist, even though I am not Buddhist. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I had this conversation with Brent Spirit, who is a Kundalini sort of like, in my opinion, sort of someone who has dedicated his life to helping people understand what that really means, the step-by-step transformation, if you've had one, whether you want to perceive it as like a psychotic episode, or he's helping people, leading them to a higher value or understanding of what they're experiencing, rather than be left with the idea that they're broken with this,
Oh, yeah.
this
Yeah.
mental issue. Because he personally had a journey where, he experienced this and he went to find answers, and he was confronted with a doctor giving him a recommendation of a mental health hotline, and
Yeah.
so, you sort of like, with consciousness as it is, we're all playing or playing, or we're just playing, or we are all, part of this oneness, this singular that we speak of, that is, another way to perceive reality. And in your situation, I mean, that's one of the things I love teaching people. So for me, information comes in and I observe it, as you would say, the dukkha,
Yeah,
right?
the distortion. There's a
Yeah,
friction.
yeah.
It's not
So,
information. It's a feeling. It's a feeling.
well, for me, it comes in two forms. Well, actually, three: a thought, feeling, and an emotion. And you're able to separate those. So it will literally come up. Like, say, if someone's obsessive, say, for example, I'm entering into a situation where someone is absolutely one-tracked OCD obsessive with something. And it's very easy for you to be in the presence of any energy, which is all things, and you can actually experience what it is that they're thinking, feeling. And so what happens is you can also then perceive that as yours, where we always talk about all thoughts of our mind are not ours. Then who in Tao's name, whose are they? And so this is all just, we're all part of this tapestry. So when information comes in the form, and I perceive it as, you know, I'm standing at a certain point, the veil is complete black void, and what someone could see as a thought will come in, and it will look like a Polaroid to me. And I will literally just virtually set it on fire, and it will burn up before my very eyes, as it's not a part of me. It's an option. And with that thought, that image is an emotion and a feeling. These are all options. You either take them in and you embody them as this physicality, this human experience, which, I personally haven't embodied that type of processes for decades, yet it's something that people start with. It's a starting point. You need to be able to go, okay, move that aside, the distortion, and experience what Martin might perceive as, the non-dualistic, non-centric moment where it's just
It's
nothing.
just so
It's
the
just
definition.
being.
Yeah, I mean that's very interesting what you say, because I take that down to for me the thoughts are completely overrated for me. I don't give much attention to thoughts. For me, it's the distortion you have towards the thought that's the problem, because you can have a thought of something that happened, and when you think of it in the past, then it was difficult. But if you think of it in this moment, okay, I work through that. I call emotions and feelings, for me, it's sensations in the body. So that's why I call it
Yeah.
distortion, because it's just the sensation that you feel. And when you're in a state of, it's almost like a pressure. Like it's a pressure between something that you feel is here and that goes out, and when that drops away, then everything just is. And there seems to be very different levels of this. You also
Oh,
change how you perceive vision. Like, so one of the things that happened when I went through the first level of the Sotyapanya thing was that I shifted from feeling I am here and vision kind of goes there. Like it feels like I have a perspective. That kind of dropped away, and it was more like everything just was more like that. And then there's a sense that everything just comes closer and there's no distance to it. There's also perspective change that you have. Instead of seeing a focus point, especially in non-centricness and non-duality, it widens and you're aware of a wide space. That's also congruent with if you go into jhanas and concentration states, they also widen your awareness. You don't just see a point, you're aware of more space, kind of. And that has to do with the whole sense of self. So if you just focus on that, that just makes it a lot easier, because then you don't need all these other things. I mean, like I said, you can do that, but for me, that's simply not what I was after. And um, it's a difference in. I mean, I can make things go away. So if I have a difficult emotion, I can focus on a point. I actually went to acupuncture just before this meeting. Now this time, and. As she was putting the nails in, I realized that before, when I did that, I would have focused on my hand, and I would have just focused here and I wouldn't feel the nail because I was focused on my hand. And the samadhi, or the concentration, was very strong on the hand, and someone entered the nail. What I do now, and what I mean with the distortion, is that that's an avoidance mechanism. You're avoiding feeling that feeling. First, it's like, oh, I'm going to be stung. Oh, I don't want to feel it. And then there's a pain, and there's like, usually she's actually pretty good, so I don't feel much. But if she hits it sometimes, maybe it's you're supposed to heal. I don't know. Feel.
it depends on if she's hitting a meridian or she's hitting a nerve. Now, if she's hitting a nerve,
Yeah.
that's why there's a lot of acupuncturists.
Yeah, she's pretty good. Yeah, she's serious with what she does. And anyway, my point was that I could focus on a point and not feel it. But what I do now is that I just widen my awareness, and I just stay in a state where I try to not distort. So if you can see then what I mean with the friction, the tension, the pressure against, oh, something unpleasant is going to come, but you just observe that and you try to not push it away, and you let it happen. And then the interesting thing is, if you take that away, then it's just sensation. It's just something entering here, and then you take away the friction you had against you. So that's basically what mindfulness does with people who have chronic illness. They look at what you're feeling, and then you take that away, and oh, the pain is so much less. Actually, the pain is probably very similar to what it was before, but you're not having this. I don't want to feel the pain. So I separate those things a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like we're talking about the same thing with a different language. For
Yeah,
the OG students, anyone that knows this channel, what Martin's talking about is the first person, third person, no person, like acclamation. So when you go first person, third person, no person, you're all things. And
sure.
so this is the separation that what we talk about, which is the thought, feeling, and emotion. The thought can be acquired in the past, and once you dissolve the feeling and the emotion, it becomes wisdom. So you can recall it, you can access it, but it's not attached to a place, person, or thing. So it's no longer creating this feeling, this distortion that Martin's speaking of. That's what we master, is you can access this, dissolve the emotion and the feeling, still have the thought, which could be relevant to a past moment, the birth of your child,
because
an
it's just a
elated
thought.
awareness of all things. And then you can keep that if it's the love that is unconditional, or you can dissolve the feeling and emotion through certain practices that make it nothing more than a thought. And so that distortion is the part that distracts people, because when you're not aware of it as something that, so for example, just the last podcast I had, I talked about, what resonance is, and understanding that from a scientific perspective, the scientists have it sort of like stuck in a certain state where, energy, if you just sort of like quote most people or their understanding of energy, it cannot be created or destroyed. It just is. So this is the tapestry of our reality. It's all things. Now, it's whatever your perception is, as Martin would say, distortion. Are you aware of it or not? Or what are you doing with it? In your situation, you would like to sort of like move your attention away from it, yet
No, other way around. I move my attention towards it. This is complete acceptance of everything you're feeling. It's not about, if I have a difficult sensations, it's about having the courage to face that completely. And when you face it completely, you realize that you are making this distortion. When I have this, when she's going to stick the nail, that's so
right,
easy because it's
right,
a very pointed event, not like someone broke up with me, but that's more
right,
difficult.
right,
But when I have that, I have this like, oh, something's going to happen, and I have
right,
a tense up. I create a pressure. So instead of avoiding that, I
right,
feel it completely, and then when you do, eventually you look at
right,
that, and it just dissolves, and it doesn't happen.
right,
So it's not that you avoid it; you actually have to feel everything, every uncomfortable
right,
feeling, all. Just yesterday I had this weird thing coming up from my stomach. I have lots of like distortion moving or energy moving, and I felt, oh, I'm gonna die. And I was just sitting there, lots of thoughts came up with, oh, it's gonna be my funeral, and my son is gonna be there, and he'll be so sad, and my daughter, and like, oh, she'd really miss me, like it would be really sad for her. But there was kind of like a melancholy. There was not really like I wasn't worried about it or like any fear. And I was talking to my fiance about it, and I was just thinking, oh yeah. So
right,
like all these thoughts come up, and instead of thinking, "Oh, I don't want to think about dying," no, 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 because that's how I was a lot before. Like I don't want to think about dying. Like I'm very aware of my mortality. I'm very aware of
right.
my what do you call that? Things that I lack and that I can't do,
Sure,
and
sure.
that's perfectly fine. So it's accepting those things rather than avoiding them, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I was getting at is you still, on a subconscious level, are using this humanist sort of like tag. You said moving with courage into this,
Yeah,
whereas
it's
we
just
will
words.
look.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
words are very interesting, my
yeah,
friend.
yeah, yeah.
Words tend to admit. I always teach people psychic reading 101. All you do is listen to someone's words that come out of their mouth, and you understand and identify and know all the deep, dark, sort of like unaware processes that are going on in your unconscious that reveal themselves in this present moment. So it's like the words to you are not as relevant. So, for example, for us, when you have a feeling, I remind people the idea or the perception, the understanding that a thought, feeling, and emotion is the secret source of all things in your reality. Now, what do you do with that? I help people understand how to activate or access the very present moment, which is all things, no place, person, or thing, title, no title. You are now. And that's the only way you can access manifestation, magic, and healing from my perspective. This is the way I've sort of shown people how to acquire this state, and it's a feeling. And that feeling, from the side effect of it, in a physiological perspective, creates a certain brainwave within this physicality that is accessible, that basically envelops consciousness as a whole. And I've measured it from EEGs many times. So when you get to certain people that are creating this brainwave, the hertz frequency over 40 hertz gamma frequency gives you this accessibility. It's somehow, this is the feeling that you get that is related to the brain wave that makes it possible for you to access consciousness at 100%, meaning you can erase PTSD, you can create an instant healing. These are options, but this is, again, sort of like, the feeling is, in my opinion, how I teach people, is the fallacy. It's the lie. Yet,
That's
as a
exactly what I'm
human,
saying.
exactly, it's like we're talking to
That's
the
what I'm
same
trying to
thing.
say.
It's like,
I'm trying to listen and understand what you're saying, and
yeah,
it's like,
yeah, and
that's
that's
kind of what I'm saying. Yeah,
yeah, that's the lie, and that's where we get distracted by our humanness. Is like, okay, I'm not, and this is where I agree with you, and I think we just say it a different way. I'm not in any way promoting anyone to dissolve their personality, as it's part of the gift of their experience as a human. The human condition is part of that. But when you master this ability to change the state you're in, you have options. Because, I mean, in definition, consciousness is, in my opinion, is being aware you have options. So when you do that, then you can go, all right, like, well, right now, I'm just being in this present moment. And for me, the present moment is the ability to access all things instantaneously, information, perhaps something that will acquire a shift of consciousness in anyone observing what it is that you're sharing. And so for me, my main purpose on this face of the earth at this reincarnation, this incarnation, however you want to perceive it, is to help people raise their consciousness. And so if I do something, absurdly, wildly unreal for them, for example, envelop my forearm and create anesthesia and drive a stake through it, which is a very common qigong sort of like ability from a high level of consciousness, and pull it out, and I've got a smile on my face, and people are freaking out going, how did you do that? And then there's no blood or no entry point. What is going on there? It is just a state of consciousness. It's being shared. I use it as a tool to someone to go, what the oh, whoa, I've never seen that before. That's not possible. That can't, no way. So now I have to change my whole, just as Martin said, I'm not being myopic and hyper-focused, high beta, kind of neurotic about things. I'm stepping back and opening up my lens to the possibility that there's something more out there than what I perceive in front of me. And so then I want to bring up this whole scientific, interesting stuff that you and I really have no interest in.
No, because that's the thing. When you said that, like, I realize now what the problem is, that the stuff you're talking about now is like, it's irrelevant to me, because I'm not interested in opening people's minds up. Like, I mean, no, I'm not. If they want to, and if they're at the point where they want to do that, then yes, we can talk about it. But why should I convince anyone of something? Like I say, I only preach to the choir. I have no interest in converting anyone. I have no interest in taking anyone away from their beliefs. I just present what I say, and they can do whatever they want to do with it. And I'll tell a story of why I don't believe in beliefs. Because I remember this so clear. There was a young man at Plum Village when I was there one summer, and he was quite mentally ill. And he was talking about he said, Bante, have you met the squid people? Like, what? The squid people? Yeah, you know the squid people. You must have seen them. Like, maybe. Who are they? And like, yeah, they go up and down my spine, and they go up and down. I can feel and kind of go up and down the spine, and they tell me messages. They tell me things. I'm like, okay, kill John Lennon, or like, what are we talking about? And he's like, no, they tell me, sorry, that was a bad joke. He said they give me messages and tell me things. And he talked about like these really generic things about how we're all one, and like how we come from source and we're this thing. And he just basically rambled off a lot of like stuff that this squid people that were going up and down his spine were telling him. And I tell this to my class, and people say like, well, obviously he's a little bit crazy, right? It's like he was a little bit off the edge there. And I said, well, how do you know that? Like, can you really be sure? Because I mean, what he described is basically what it feels like when you squeeze this thing that I have had going up and down my spine since like the last 14, 15 years, and it just never stops. I could understand how he would interpret that and put the form, oh, it's a squid. And then he started talking to this thing he was feeling, and then that became truth. Well, they said, like, no, that's like obviously untrue. And I said, well, what about like someone talking to a burning bush, or someone talking to spirits in the sky, or someone
Mm.
communicating with dolphins? I don't know, like, how can you say it's not true, and how do you know what is true? Because everyone has this belief, like, okay, no, well, they're wrong, but my religion, that one is right, right? Because we believe in X, Y, and Z religion, and we're correct. They're wrong. Like, how do you know that? And since I was fortunate that I traveled, when I was monastic, I spent most of the time in either really strict Theravadan centers, where it was just, like you said, it's basically you take away the diamonds, you realize there's dirt. I think that was pretty funny. And in one way, pretty correct. Like in one way, that's true. But then you discover there's diamonds underneath the dirt again, kind of.
In your
But
next life. In your
in your
next
next life.
life,
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly. But there was like, there was a good point to that. So when I did that, I would go to the centers where like it's all about limiting enjoyment, like that this world is nice or good, like this is all just like suffering. That's their belief. And then I went to Plum Village, where they sing and dance and enjoy nature and enjoy other people, and think that it's about enjoyment of life. And they would say, you know what, those people over there, they're absolutely mad, they don't know what they're talking about. And they would say like, oh, they're not even Buddhist, what the heck are they doing, like this is blasphemy. And everyone would say they're wrong, we're right. And they would say, how can you even? Are you saying our teacher, our like Sudha, I mean Lokohandra, or our Thai or whatever? Are you saying they're wrong? And I'm like, well, it's not even a discussion for me. I'm not interested in the form you want to put this into. That's why I only focus on, like I said, the distortion. It's all you need. Like, this is me, and the feeling that I'm pushing against something. That's really, it's all you need to then build up all these other forms. And for me, it's just we're putting a structure, and some structures have more worldly stuff in them than others, and some are
Mm.
very, I like to have as little as possible. So I really believe that it's very, very simple. And the problem is that we don't. So if someone feels bad, it's very simple to feel good again. It's just that we need some excuse to allow ourselves to feel good. But change, like you said, Pete, it can happen like that. It really
Mm.
can. It's just that we need to get in a state, or in a place where we are able to allow ourselves to feel good again.
Mm. Oh,
And we have, yeah.
no, go ahead. I mean, I agree with you 1,000,000%. I guess
I just want to
the
point out, I'm not
yeah,
saying this, I'm not saying anyone is wrong, but I'm also not saying anyone is right. I'm saying that I can't determine, because if I was an alien who came down
yeah.
and I looked at all of this and I was like, well, guys, you know what? You're all just basing what you say on what someone said or what you experience.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then you interpret that as something. And like, how should I know? Like, like, maybe you're all right. Maybe no one's right. So I just say, that's not part of what I'm trying to do. And it's not necessary to change your beliefs, or like
Right,
it's not even
right.
part of the problem.
Well, I
Maybe
mean,
part, yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, that comes back to the old what I talk about. It's a monologue, not a dialogue. And so,
Sure.
when you're I mean, once again, it's like this, then the fabric of the very understanding that you're sharing with us is still set in a belief system.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because you still, so how I approach it is, I always tell people, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And people are like, what? And so when I share with them a way to navigate through their reality, being able to see the variable differences from this electromagnetic fields that are basically the structure of this consciousness, there's a developmental skill. So again, I would say that how you walk into the fire and you experience the fire until the fire burns out. I can appreciate that. From a Taoist perspective, there's a fire. I have the tools to put the fire out in the next second. I don't have to experience, because on a deeper level, what happens is the understanding of these emotions, when they enter from the alchemical processes of a Taoist, they enter what we call the yellow court, which is the solar plexus, the diaphragm, and
Yeah,
they
you feel a
sit
lot
there,
there. True.
and
Yep.
they sit there until you've registered as it has a place, person, or thing. So it has an anchor. Then it goes to the appropriate organ that then it sits and festers and manifests into a physical ailment. And so the ultimate goal is to realize the distortion, the dukkha, as Martin speaks of it, is not real, and that if you attach it to a place, person, or thing, it will lead you or have you subject to another transformation. And this is only valid if you resonate with Taoist alchemy. It, again, karma is subject to your perception of reality, and people are like, what? No, that's part of the law of the universe. Oh, here we go again. It's like your football team's better than mine. I've gone through this journey over 30 years, and this is the part of that realization that if someone's in front of me, then there's this moment of realization of healing, manifestation, magic. They're here for this present moment. There are no coincidences. I think we could agree on that, perhaps, that there are no coincidences.
I think what you said, you actually said, or almost it's just, maybe it's nicer to say it like you said. You said that everyone has their own truth. That's basically what I'm saying. I'm saying the truth is not important.
Right.
So that's pretty much what you mean. I'm assuming when you say everyone has their own truth, is that it's not important what you call truth, because you have yours, I have mine, and I just try to minimize it down to in Swedish we call it minsta gemensamma nämnare. It's the smallest common denominator. Is that it? Like the smallest point. If you have a tangent on a circle, you try to not widen it and have all these no, you just try to find the smallest point, because you still need some kind of explanation to have a basis to work with. And the smallest thing to work with that I can find is working with this distortion. And then you can build on that, and you can have your own truth about that. I just don't get involved in that, because I'm not interested. Scientists will say, well, when this happens, or even brainwaves. I mean, I don't really care. It's obvious when I sit that something happens. If I just close my eyes, I don't close my eyes when I meditate. I sit down and they drop. And I can't really open them. It's not like I'm keeping them closed. It's just I lose the function.
Yeah.
And I realized very early that there was something that happened in the meditation, and that just comes. So obviously something happens to my brain. What happened? I mean, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It works. It functions. Why do I need to figure it out?
And I mean, I think that's amazing, because I mean, pretty much, we have a very similar story. Yours might be peppered with a little bit more suffering. But we have the same,
Well,
the same result, because that was kind of like my realization over 30 years ago when I started this, and it happens instantaneously. Like right now, we're having a conversation. My eyes are open. I'm experiencing the universe. This backdrop doesn't exist. I'm literally in what we consider outer space, experiencing and sampling the kinesthetic charge of the constellations, the sun, the moon, the earth. And this is what we call the Nigong inner power, multidimensional access points. And so when I go and say, do my practice, I'm never really closing my eyes. I don't have to turn a sense on, because everything is very vivid and I can see it all. It's just changing that state of consciousness. Okay, now I'm going to experience this, the present moment, the sun, experience this, the present moment, a physical healing, that you become one with it. Like, my daughter had a toothache. She's getting a tooth in, and her generally her gums were swollen, and she's like, oh my goodness, I'm in so much pain. I just sat there and became one with the tapestry of all things, and the swelling disappeared in 1 second. Something that had turned into quite a large mass in her mouth. So all it was resetting. As you are one, all things, all I did was reset that disturbance, that distortion, to its natural state. And so, perhaps maybe, people have the epiphany of a Shirley MacLaine going down the river of somewhere in Tibet, and she witnessed, this is something that never left me, was her version of Buddhism was quite dramatic. She was in this little boat going down a river, and there was people on the side of the river waiting for boats to pick them up, and a woman had a baby, and she was standing there, and the baby fell out of her hands, and she just stood there and watched the baby drown. and Shirley MacLaine is like, what the? And someone was going to reach it, and the woman stopped to not reach for the baby, and the baby drowned. And the understanding of that from a Buddhist perspective is that's karmic, and you don't interfere with that. That's what happens. It's like this: if you explain everything as this present moment, and all things there are no coincidences, that was meant to happen. And so, you can get into a certain state of like, whoa, I'm sorry, then I'm going to be altering my karmic line of realization quite often. And then, of course, then you go, well, you're subject to your personality, because
But
now
I
you're
didn't quite understand. Do you
intercepting.
mean that they intentionally let the baby drown,
Yeah,
or did the baby
yeah,
fall
yeah.
in?
The
So
woman stood there and watched the baby drown because her belief was that's part of there are no coincidences,
yeah,
and this
and
is karma.
then I would say the coincidence would be that you would jump in and do everything you can to save the child. But
Right.
and I
And
think
again, what a perspective. But
yeah.
Shirley MacLaine was like, oh my goodness. And then they were explaining it to her. It's like, this is part of the karmic model of true understanding. There are no coincidences. And with everything, what you reap, you will sow.
Yeah.
And so this is part of the present moment. And, you and I are like, well, the consciousness is having me reach in and grab that baby because that's that present moment, right?
It's just what you do. I think this is the problem for me, that people take these things and they take them too far. I like what you said about it's not the personality, because I believe, my belief is that this is just my belief, and a belief means that I assume or guess, basically, I guess, because I don't know. But the way that I approach it is that we pretty much know almost nothing about what the Buddha actually said, because it's thousands of years after it happened, and they wrote these. Even the earliest texts are several hundred years old, and you just doing the ring, where you talk something around a circle, just see how quickly that goes. Now imagine that a few generations in people that weren't even that educated compared to what we are today. I mean, my belief, at least, since I've seen many monks, they're not superhuman. They may have lots of time to do unusual things, but still they're humans. They're very human. And I'm not saying there aren't people who can do extraordinary things, but having a memory that can phthalate and having that over generation, no. So I believe what we can get from these things is the broad things, kind of the broad outlines. I believe that why I said that, even though I don't see myself as a Buddhist, I still do some Buddhist things, which is that I believe that all things are this distortion. That's the problem. But I don't believe in many of the way they talk about it, and all these small things. Now, if you do this, then this happens, and then that, and very nuanced. I think that's just the way people tried to describe it to people who didn't understand it, and then they tried to describe it, and then eventually the people who were describing it to people who didn't understand it themselves, and then we just, in the end, it's like we just kind of make up stuff how I feel. So I have an experience, I'm sitting, I see this light. Oh, obviously I'm in a church, it's the Holy Spirit comes to me, obviously that's what it is. If you're in a Buddhist center, then it was a jhana, or a nimitta, it's called, a concentration, that you just see kind of a circle of light, nothing big, it just happens. If you're some other tradition, you can just make up all these stories around the same experience. And I think it's dangerous when people take it that far and don't see that you have your personality. It's not that you don't exist as the sum of your experiences, because you have a personality. Like, I like music, I like the Beatles, I like old school music, I love the simplicity of one of my favorite songs is Paul McCartney, when he goes up and sings Yesterday, and he just goes up on the stage, he has a guitar, nothing else, and I can't remember who it is, the presenter, and he just stands there, just sings. There's nothing else, just a guitar and a guy singing, and it's the most amazing performance in the world. Up, like, compared to anyone you'll see in MTV, not even MTV anymore, but that, I think that's much more powerful, because that's my personality. I believe in simplicity. I believe in that, like, cleanness, not overproduce. It's just a guy with an amazing song who just knows how to play the guitar. He's not the best singer in the world, but it's him. And that's my personality. But I can do that without having the distortion. It's not that I say, you're a bad person, son, because you don't like, I don't actually know if you like the Beatles or not, but
Actually, I do not. I was
okay.
going to say, I was going
Then
to say, you and my dear friend Vinny, he owns a sound studio out here in
Yeah.
Las Vegas, and I did a lot of recording with him back in the day for my actual no shameless plug, but I have an app that gives you this consciousness. But anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
Vinny is a like diehard Beatles guy, and I would always love to come in there every day and just, oh man, I just don't get it. And like his threat level went up. They're the greatest artists in history. They just created music that is unfathomable in this day and age, and that they had to do recordings individually, stuff that you could do
Yeah.
in Pro Tools in 5 seconds. That was just unreal
Yeah.
for their time. Even today, you cannot replicate some of the stuff they created, and I believe that. But I was more entertained by his reaction to the very comment that I made about not really.
So there you have a perfect example. You basically said it. It's not the personality that is the problem. It's the distortion towards your personality or your attachment, if you want to call that. If you have a problem with someone saying, no, you know what, the Beatles suck. The music is just terrible. I mean, what are you talking about? They're so old. It's just so like
Right.
pling plong, pling plong, pling plong, damn pianos. Like, how can you even listen to that crap? If I would then feel hurt, that means I have placed a feeling of my identity to feel good. It demands that people around me believe the same as I do, approve of my belief. But if I take that away, then it doesn't matter. So it's not that your personality goes away. And I think many people want to be spiritual. They have this belief that I should behave in this way. Then I have reached this state of enlightenment, and I should do these things. I have to say these things. Otherwise, obviously, I'm not there. And they try to do the end effects, kind of like I want to be a millionaire, so I go out and buy a Lamborghini and spend money on lobsters and they think that's what it means to be a millionaire. That's like the effects that you can do by being a millionaire, but that's not actually how you become a millionaire. It's almost the opposite, actually, by going out and spending money like that if you don't have it. So I think people take the wrong approach there.
Yeah, no, again, and I will always bring people back to your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And then all this stuff is conceptual.
Yeah.
Whoever's listening to this, you have to, this is where we talk about resonance. You have to resonate with what it is that we're speaking of. And maybe neither of us have something to say that the audience is listening to that they want to hear. And that's, guess what? That's the perfect place that you need to be in, and you'll move to something that gives you, I think this is a consensus between both of us, a feeling that is real to you. So, the simplicity of a friend of the channel, Hans, he would always say, you're either contracting or expanding, and I'll feel it. I'll move away from things that make me contract, and I'll move towards things that make me expand. And so perhaps maybe that simplicity would be
for me, that's distortion, what he's talking
right.
about.
Right.
Because
Look at
that's
that.
very
Yeah.
much that's
Yeah.
very much what it feels like. It feels
Yeah.
like when there's distortion, there's a pressure. I'm feeling like this. And when you're going away from that, it kind of opens up and there's not
Yeah.
that. So you could call that contraction and expansion. Sure. That
Yeah.
would be actually exactly what I'm saying. He
Yeah.
just has a different way of speaking about
Yeah.
it, kind of. So it is the same thing for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And I mean that to me is very much similar to the way I share it with the people that I show them, help them become aware of the innate internal power that they hold within them as the universe. And that's sort of like, how do you create that? Well, there's a certain state. Now I've referred to, um, theories, philosophies, systems, but they're all just a different way to perceive what it is that you're experiencing. And that's why I sort of go from quantum physics to epigenetics to spirituality to philosophy, all the way down to something that might be myopic, that at a subatomic level, or something expansive that it's really, if you're thinking, you're not knowing; if you're knowing, you're feeling. And then I sort of give that expression to anyone and offer and invite them in the conversation, because really, it's not real until you say it is. And that validation can be, through the lens of distortion to this awareness that becomes one with all things. But there's also things that you're acquiring in your own expression of consciousness that doesn't even entertain some of the things that I'm speaking of. And that's completely beautiful, because guess what? There's a million ways up the mountain, and the only truth is your truth that you need to be concerned with. And so that resonance is so funny because that's that part I was speaking of. So we get into, okay, so energy cannot be created or destroyed. Excellent. This is all energy. And then it has everything has a vibration and a frequency. These are sort of little if you want to go right into the myopic part of distortion, that is what whether you've defined it as that, you're experiencing it in a certain way that I can go into that and then feel through it and then let it go. Let it go, as my daughter would say from, I think it's like, what's that? What's that? What's that
Oh,
movie?
Frozen.
Yes,
Elsa.
yes. Let
Yeah,
it
my
go,
daughter sings.
let it go, or
Yeah.
never attach it, as we would say, you never attach it to a place, person, or thing. And it's like the old, I use the analogy of the bucket of fish, and you're hillbilly hand fishing. The fish are rising to the top. You just reach in and grab another one, which is it's kind of interesting because it's kind of similar. You're describing how you experience something, and you can be not, you're no person. So it's there, and you don't have to commit to it. You don't have to embrace it. You don't have to be a part of that thought, feeling, and emotion. And that's, in my opinion, a mastery. And when you do that, then you can really have an effortless experience. And that's ultimately you embody and embrace all things as one, because the universe is perfection. The Tao is perfection. Buddha is perfection. All things are just where they need to be, right down to the conscious understanding of this present moment, which is really the only, in my opinion, and all the things that I've taught people over the years, what I've experienced. If you gravitate to the things that I share with you, the present moment is the answer to all things. That's why they call it, the present. The gift is your offering. The selfless state. That's that selflessness that you sort of get into where, and as your admission is, I'm not so much into the in-service part. I'm just being.
No, I'm not against the service part. I'm just saying that's kind of, I've seen many people who then believe, okay, you know what, it's all about helping other people. I've seen nuns who get so angry at seeing a bird coming down and trying to catch a rabbit that was running. And I'm kind of like, you're having distortion towards nature. Kind of like, that's natural. I understand you want the rabbit to live, but that's just kind of how it is. Birds catch rabbits. There's not a problem. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the heat. And I do that, but I don't do it because I believe it's the right thing to do. I do it because it's the natural thing to do. So when it's like I said, that if you want to become a millionaire, then you go out and spend money on Lamborghinis and stuff instead of doing the stuff that made you a millionaire. So I believe that by looking at these things as they come up, and when I listen to you, I love listening to you because I hear what you're saying, and then few words pop up. Oh yeah, that I like. You said effortless. Effortless is exactly what it feels like when you're not distorting. There's just this effortless way of being in life, and when you live like that, when you don't distort towards the world, something happens. Kind of, for me, the thing that makes me feel, it's like I have a biofeedback device built in with this like thing running up and down my spine, because it really does disappear when I'm not distorting towards reality, when I'm really here. And especially when I sink into that deeper, then that disappears. And the funny thing is, if you're in a state of really non-centricness or non-duality, it's like the whole world is just, it's not enjoyment of your feelings, it's enjoyment of your senses. It's everything is so beautiful, everything is just perfect. It's the way you feel sometimes when you go into a church and you just go, or a mosque or whatever religion you're in, and you go in and you feel this expansiveness and you just go like, wow, everything is placed here on purpose, everything is perfection, beautiful, and just there's no need to harm this or move this. Even like that chair lying there, it's perfect. I don't need to move that. It's just where it's supposed to be. And that the way everything look, if it's dirty, if it's old, it doesn't matter. It's exactly the way it's supposed to be. It feels like that. And then you can move it. But it's not moving because, oh, that looks dirty, I need to clean that.
Right.
Or
right.
I
That's
need to
distortion.
Yeah, because then it's distortion. But then the personality comes in. Who are you? I could be you
Quick, I
dropping
got to get this done. I've got to clean this. I got to hurry
Yes.
up. The kids are getting ready.
Yeah.
I need to make sandwiches. I got to get ready for school. We're going to be late. We're in 5 minutes. That is distortion.
And that's helping. That's also helping. I come from a Buddhist perspective, and I see so many people who want so badly to get good karma from helping, that they're helping by trying to do, like, do you see what I mean here? They're
Well,
helping by
well,
believing they're supposed to get something from it, or
yeah. I mean, the within Taoism we call it: if you act in virtue, you have none. So
yeah,
the
sure, yeah,
virtue
yeah,
is
yeah,
what
yeah,
some people would call virtue signaling.
yeah,
It's like in the concept, it's like, well, God, I took the shirt off my back. I gave a homeless person $5. I made the lunch for my kid. I've let go of all my worldly possessions. Materialism is the evil source of all
yeah,
things.
yeah.
I am just selfless. No, actually, no. You're distorted
Huge self. Yeah,
well, how the kids would abbreviate. You're as distorted as AF.
yeah,
That's really what you
exactly.
are. You're distorted, and so it's like when you access this present moment, the selflessness is not something that people come to me all the time. They're like, "Oh, Shifu, I've got this situation. I can help this person, and they need." They're my handyman. They're my housekeeper. There's someone that I know that is in need, and they need to go back to their country, and they need some money because their mother's sick, and I really want to help them. What do I do? Nothing. What? Well, I'm coming to you because I want another perspective. I want you to help me give me insight of how I should help this person. No, you don't. You're looking for an outcome. What can you get out of this? Because
Yeah,
the
yeah,
selfless act, the present moment, you're not thinking. Your knowing is this person, I have the resources, this person is in need, here it is. And there's no
exactly.
distortion, it's instantaneous.
Yeah,
And so they're like, oh, what? I said, look, the first red flag you need to identify with is when you look in the mirror and you say, I'm a good person. Then we need to
yeah,
have a
sure, yeah,
conversation.
yes,
We need to have
yeah,
this conversation because, again, back to what Martin said, it's a distortion. And so this is another perspective of reality. And people virtue signal all the time, and they get caught up in what some people would perceive as organized religion, belief systems. I always will tell you this, that the first thing that you identify with is something. I don't care what it is. You could believe in green Martians or anything. This is a good baseline. Now, that's still a distortion. And this is why always people are like, be love, be one with the universe, and all things will be realized. And I mean, it's such a throwaway hallmark statement.
now we're starting to talk the more same language.
And
Now
so
you're
when
opening up. I like
someone
it, I
says
like it.
that, well, that's when someone says that, I go, well, what is, what is this? Love is subjective. And they're like, no, it
Yeah,
isn't.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can feel it from your heart. I said, look, love
hmm,
to you could be razor blades and bunny rabbits. And to me, it could be unicorns and rainbows. And until you get to a state of this present moment, and this is part of, as the non-centric model that Martin uses, is being all things, there's no distortion, then you will embody and experience what we call the oneness, the Wu-Ji, the Tao, Buddha, all things, the universe, because it's not a distorted sort of version of how you get to that state. So when I share with people how they acquire this present moment, it always starts with love. And they're like, yeah, that's right. That's what I've read. That's what they tell me this all the time. I'm like, no, that's the first subjective line that you need to
mm.
dissolve.
I was
And
careful when
then
you
you
say
go
stuff like
to,
that. There's a lot of people who don't like to hear that.
oh, right. And then,
Love
well, you
can
see,
be very coarse. It can be very
right.
gross. Yeah,
And so I get them to go from love to gratitude, because then that's a little bit more universal. All of a
yeah,
sudden they're starting to get an idea of, well, what do you mean? Gratitude was quite easy. If I give you a compliment or I hand you $5, you can feel that, and you know that it's identifiable to you. Then, of course, the ultimate in the Taoist perspective is in accept and allow all things. And people are like, what? What? Accept and allow all things. That means I always give people what they call the 72-hour challenge. I'm like, well, what is that? Accept and allow everything in your life. You come home, your wife's being nailed by the neighbor, you accept and allow it.
yeah,
You turn around, you go into the kitchen, you make yourself a coffee, you're out of coffee because the guy who's nailing your wife drank the last bag. You then accept that, you walk out to your car, you get in your car, you go for a drive, and you stop at the lights, and all of a sudden your car runs out of gas. You get out of your car, you accept that, you allow that as the distortion, as Martin would say. The more you allow it, the less the distortion. And then what people find is within 24 hours, all of a sudden their life is becoming very effortless. There's no need for judgment. There's no need for gossip. There's no need for this perception of how you want to validate yourself as separate from all things. And within 48 hours, it's literally like, everything's happening to me. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, because I'm accepting, allowing things, you're resonating at the same state, and it keeps expanding, and you're this present moment, and all of a sudden, everything, it's like, people would call it good luck. I don't know what it is, but it just seems to happen instantly. And within the 70-second hour, a lot of people are ready. I need to tap out. I need drama. I realize that I'm addicted to my personality. I'm addicted to emotions. But I would say it's a 50-50. 50% of people that go on that challenge will embody the realization of consciousness to another level, and how effortless, as we call in Taoism, Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort, or more so being done by the Tao. And so most of these motivational speakers these days they're like, you cannot manifest something just by sprinkling fairy dust. You must act on this. And this is where you and I probably perceive things the same way.
I just never think about those things. It's a side effect. It's like you take a medicine, and there's a lot of positive. I just never focus on it. But
Right.
I want to ask you a question, because you said you asked them to allow it. One of the issues that I could see by using that word is that then they believe, okay, I can't do anything because I have to allow it.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that's not what you mean. I mean, during that practice, because you still have to get out of the car and move. And I think
it's part of the thought, feeling, and emotion that's derived. So yeah, sure. You get in and out of your car on an autonomous level. You're not actually thinking about that. You're not processing getting in and out of your car. You're not processing breathing. You're not processing the blood pumping through your veins. This would be more on a universal level. Like, that's the present moment, is that universal tapestry that gives you your heartbeat.
If they were a mechanic, would it be okay for them to open up the car and fix the car in the middle of the street?
Well, of course, but what happens is
that's what I wanted to get at, because people then I really like that challenge. I'll try to figure out a way to say that in my terms, so I can use for my students, because I like that. And then what happens is that you try really hard to just not resist things, but also not push things away or pull things towards you. Just allow them to be the way they are. The thing that people don't understand then is, then I would just lie on my sofa and do nothing. And that's not true. We're just so used to being motivating by this, like, or emotions, if you want to call it that we don't know what would it be like to not have that and just exist in this expansiveness that your friend called it, this sense of not having pressure against the world, but you're just moving. And then it's just natural to help other people. But I don't go out to intentionally help them. It's just what comes. And if I would have seen that child being dropped and I was the father, then I would jump in and save the child, because it's just a natural thing to do.
You would do it regardless. I mean,
yeah, why not? Even if it's a danger to myself.
It's a human life. Yet that was that moment, that epiphany of Shirley MacLaine's, oh, this is not what I thought it was. I thought this was like just, running around singing Hare Krishna or whatever it was at that moment in her realization, because, I mean, this is back in the 60s and 70s. So Eastern sort of like philosophy, they find it easier to push that. Taoism and Buddhism, it's just a philosophy. It's so benign. Isn't that funny how these people are just so... They're so defenseless. They're benign. They don't really, it's like, oh, they're not even in the equation. They're kind of like these weird people that want to just like embody all things, and that whatever. Religion's so much better. Come on. We got our football team. We got to get into, and so when you accept and allow that, it's like a process that just embodies a greater state, and you stay there because the universe doesn't have a moral compass in the sense of if you ask for something, you will receive more of it. So that means that state will continue to build on itself, and you will maintain that. Just as like when you go, look, I've got this, what most people would consider this incredible like inner alchemy that's moving through me that I hate. I don't like it. It's like irritating. It's not pleasant. And when I'm non-centric, I am all things.
I want to ask you something, Sam, because what you said, it reminds me of one of the main cornerstones of my practice, which is that when I talk to people, many people have this sense of distortion that feels like a center point. I'm here. And they walk around feeling uncomfortable most of the time of the day. They're just not happy. But it's kind of like vague anxiety, general anxiety. They just have this sense of I'm not happy here, and they feel tension. Oh, if I could just get that car, or if I could just get that woman, just that man. And for me, what I asked them to do then, because I'm trying to see if this is similar to what you said, just accepting. What I try to ask them to do then is generally regularly throughout their day, you ask yourself, how am I doing right now? What am I feeling? And you just check in and say, what am I feeling now? Like, I'm just sitting here. I'm kind of bored. Okay. Could you feel joy? Not sense like joy of your feelings, but sensual joy, meaning that could you appreciate the feeling of just touching your skin, or the feeling of just observing the world around you, or just smelling smells, just being in the present moment, basically what is what it comes down to. So I asked them to all the way throughout the day look at how am I feeling right now, and then look why they're not feeling good, because I believe it really is kind of when you tell them just accept and allow, then they have to be okay with that. I
Well,
believe you can also
that's the strike. That's the resistance, right?
yeah,
So
exactly,
that's
because
the
we
part that
believe
you would walk into. It's like you want
yeah.
to feel that, and that's what I'm saying is when you experience that, you're attaching it to a place, person, or thing as if that's actually something.
So
And
I would take that the car broke down. A
right,
good example. Car breaks down. I feel that. Instead of just moving on and not thinking about it, I would stop and I would feel, okay, I'm believing that this moment, and this moment is the only moment there is. Like it's just now kind of moving throughout time. So it's just now. I'm choosing now to not experience joy and fulfillment of being here because this thing here happened. And I believe that's enough to make me feel miserable. I know that in 2 years from now, it's not going to matter. I'll have come over that. But now I'm choosing to not feel good, to not feel joy, to not feel I am here and this world is amazing the way it is because of this thing. So I keep having them to ask that. And the reason I slow it down, I think might be because of my meditation background, that I believe we meditate to sharpen our senses so we can like have a sharp axe, right? So we
mm,
can use our mind better and like notice all of these things. And then we can observe them and then we can let go of them or realize that this is like kind of a shitty thing to do. Like, why are you hurting yourself by feeling bad about this? It's really dumb. The car is
right.
broken. I mean,
I,
you can't change that.
I really believe that we're speaking the same language because when I say accept and allow, it's like okay, I'm going to grab that guy. I'm going to beat the crap out of him, beat the crap out of my wife because my desire of approval has been like completely contracted within the
Yeah,
core of who I am. I've
yeah,
been cheated on. I have no trust, no
yeah,
worthiness, no self value. I mean, there's all these layers that would come
yeah, yeah,
into
yeah,
if
yeah,
you ever
yeah.
walked in on someone else having sex with your significant
Never
other.
have, fortunately.
Right. So just the idea of that, but like to accept and allow that and not attach it to the place, person, or thing. So
Yeah.
again, the simulation is you would say to someone, I want you to just feel into it and then it will disappear, as opposed to
Yeah, you
and
feel it and you see
not
this is a
attach it.
silly yeah, you feel it and you see, well, this is a shitty thing to do.
Right,
Why am I hurting myself?
right,
And
right,
and
right,
you can't just intellectually understand that. You have to observe it.
right.
And when you observed it enough, you realize, well, this is a really dumb thing to do. I could just choose to be happy, but I
Yeah.
shouldn't because that's wait, no, I'm gonna go one more round, and then eventually, when you it just snaps, and you're like, oh, I
Right.
don't have to feel bad about this. Like, why was I doing that?
You see, and that I think is where we're right there in the same messaging, because when you accept it from the understanding that it's not it's a distortion, as you would put it, It's not real. So this
Yeah.
is now a register of what you perceive as your reality. Now, when you accept it, that means that what happens is it will dissipate very, very quickly. That's why I say you keep allowing and accepting things, and from an hour-to-hour basis, all this stuff disappears. And so you get to a point where you're not attaching it to a place, person, or thing. And so the mastery is, you can, for me, like I said, I'm observing that and it disappears. It never turns into something bigger than that. But it is a mastery of how you access it from an energetic level, because everything is energy. Your thoughts are electric, your feelings are magnetic. These are on a much deeper level. When you understand those mechanisms from a Taoist, you're looking at things from a duality. When you're non-centric or non-dualistic, all these things meet as one, which is a whole nother resonance that is on a different plane, which is what we call the Tao, the mother of all things, the oneness, the present moment. And so perhaps maybe we see it, or I teach it in a way where you can be far more myopic about these things, and quickly, as if you're looking at, ads coming up on your cell phone, you go, no, swipe left, swipe right. And this is understanding how you can, as you said, feel into it. But like when you're going through these events, the more you accept and allow, the more effortless it becomes. And it literally, by a minute by minute, hour by hour basis, you'll come to that realization. So then the emotions are no longer controlling you, and all of a sudden your life becomes effortless. It becomes sort of like, as it stands, the present moment. But with that, the default, the realization of this, true example of what we call love, that becomes not a subjective, but a universal state that you can resonate with the frequency of the universe, and it will be a selfless state that you're in. And it doesn't take very long at all to obtain that. But you start off with the understanding this is the foundation of how you start this journey. And the more and more you move into it, as Martin would say, move into it, you realize that it's distortion. It's not real. And it just fades away. But also you can frame it. Does that make sense? I think we're in the same place.
I would, because that really, I really like this conversation. I don't say that it's not real, because in your experience right now, it feels real. But that doesn't mean it's ultimately real. I mean, if we're talking about, if you would be able to collapse into now, then it wouldn't be real. But your experience, I like to let people I don't believe in positive thinking. I mean, I don't believe we should try to think something positive and just kind of, oh, no, it's not. The car is broken. Well, it's broken because it's a higher purpose. It's my karma. Like, you haven't touched the feeling. That I don't believe. Well, it works. It's just that then it's going to come back again. So the reason I move into it and feel it is that when I started doing this is 14 years ago, pretty much. I think I told you about how I was sitting and I realized my ex, one of them, had been unfaithful and cheated on me. And I looked at that and I thought, I felt that. And then there was a good-looking guy who came in. I was like, oh my goodness, am I gay? Oh, God damn it, I didn't want to be gay. And for 2 days, I thought every sexual encounter I could with another man, and I just couldn't think about that before. And I just felt all of that, and then there's no distortion. And well, it turns out I'm not gay. I don't feel attracted to men, but I can appreciate and see that a man is really good looking, had a beautiful body, and had this really nice, like the hanging white. Yeah, he looked really good, And I can joke with my fiance and say, "Wow, that guy is like, dude, he was." Jesus, he's good looking. And there's no distortion towards that. So when you look at that, it's the first time it's like 100. And then it collapses. If you go through it really hard, like you can collapse it down to maybe 20%, but it still keeps coming back. So when people move through trauma, many times they take it away and they think, oh, I'm done with it. No, it was 100 and maybe now it's 50, but there's still some lingering there. But if you just keep on doing, and if you keep on doing that with the sense you have distortion towards colors, towards spaces, towards temperature, towards everything. That's just much more subtle. And now 14 years later, there's just so little of that. Before, if we would have had this conversation 10 years ago, I would have constantly been, ooh, oh, no, ooh, wait, no, that's not, oh, I would have been like this. I would have had so much distortion trying to get you to understand my point. Now, it's not really important. You understand it. I'm more curious and seeing, okay, what are you saying? What are you trying to get? Oh, wait, that's something. Yes, I understand that. Okay. And then I can talk not from trying to prove my point, but from trying to see, like, can we find some common ground here? Because it's not important. If you go away from here thinking I'm a complete idiot, that's fine. It doesn't really make a difference. I'm not going to feel more or less happy from that. I mean, I feel like I've made a new friend, but even if it
Oh,
wouldn't,
100 million%. I'm very grateful. You are.
so,
We are. We are already bonded, my friend.
yeah, I feel that
Yeah.
too, and that's what I mean when you take away all these forms, all these shapes, and you just experience and you allow it to come up. It goes away. It goes away. So now, 14 years later, I don't even have those emotions I had before. It's like it's not that I'm neutral. It's more that if this was my baseline before, like this would be neutral, and then before I was like up and down, and then spike because something amazing happened, and I had sex. Whoa, amazing, and then down. Now it's more like this is neutral. Then it's usually like up here, and it's more of a, and it's not joy like of the feelings, but just everything is just nice. And when I make love to my wife, it's not like I was before. I felt this like pain in my stomach. That's distortion, by the way, when we talk about distraction. It hurts and like, oh, and I have an incredibly good looking wife, I think at least. And yeah, anyway, so I would feel this distortion like, oh, I need her. And now I don't do that anymore. Like I couldn't stop mid sex and without feeling like, oh, I need to finish. It just doesn't happen like that. It's amazing to have another body next to you naked and not feel you need them, not feel you want anything, but actually just feeling touching warmth and feeling physique and just smells and just it's incredible when you take yourself out of the equation. And that just seems to be something I don't even have to put effort into.
Right.
It's just happening. And it seems to now, since I started like opening up again about a year and a half ago and doing YouTube videos and actually having conversations again, because I lived more as a layperson. I kept this going in the background, but now I'm like more active again. It started getting going again. And now it's more of a conscious process than just subconscious. And then last few months, there have been times where it just seems to be even more. If I thought I was in non-centeredness, there seems to be a place you can kind of drop into where everything just disappears. And it seems like that would be permanent. And that's a hypothesis. I don't know this because that's not how I experience reality. But it seems like if you would keep taking away, if you would keep taking away all these distortions, all these connections, which we have built up. As I said, my son, he doesn't have as many because he's so young, but I can see him building them up. So now I'm kind of taking them away. It seems like if I would keep on doing that, there would be a point where there's nothing that would come up.
Well, yeah. I mean,
And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's my hypothesis that I'm working towards.
yeah. No, I agree. I think I honestly can see that you're actually operating in this accept and allow state that I'm speaking of without anything, because it just become you are accepting and allowing it as is. There's no judgment, there's no distortion as what as to what it should or shouldn't be. It just is. And that's that present moment. That's why I love conversation with anyone and everyone. And the only person I've the only people I've never had an interaction with are Jehovah's Witness, and
Oh, it's so much fun. So
in,
much fun.
in and in
I
my
used to think so.
opinion, they, as Martin would say, their distortion is pretty high.
Yeah.
But
Well,
again, that's their perception of
yeah.
reality, and that's the most important thing. There is no right or wrong sort of like understanding of the state. But from a neurological perspective, if you're in that place of the emotional content, the reason that most people sit on a couch with a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist or however you want to call them, and you sit there for years just talking out your problems, is because you can work out, and that's a very interesting word because that just insinuates difficulty, work out the problems with this therapist. And so what happens is that's all right. You're working out in the head, but on a neurological standpoint, you have an actual brain here and a brain in your heart, and you have the neural network of this brain in your heart. So there is all this other emotional content and trauma that's stored here, not just here. And so when people work this out and they're like, it's like as if I spent 20 years on a couch getting nowhere, because all the energetics, which is the thought, feeling, and emotion, are still stored in here. And that's the epicenter. That's the entry point to all things. That's where you access your highest level of intuition in not just my opinion, but the thousands of year old rituals that I've trained people in, and then reflecting of what level of consciousness it is by some physicists telling me that this neural network is actually, it's true. There is a brain there.
Doesn't
And
matter.
I mean, and so, these are sort of semantics that Martin
Yeah.
doesn't really get concerned with. But when you realize these types of things, you can become that state of wu wei at a much more progressive rate that perhaps maybe, as we talk about the present moment, well, that's your progressive rate is perfect for where you are right now. And so there's sort of like this sort of half a dozen of one and six of the other, and understanding that, when you're not being attached by it and you can accept what it is, it's kind of like all is dissolved. And that's kind of where I am. I can accept and allow. Literally, someone could tell me to go screw myself, and in the same second, I'll be like, let's have a coffee. What do you want to sit down? What do you want to talk about? And people are like, how do you do that? I'm still in the anger of, you told me to screw myself. I want to gouge your eyes out. And it's like, it's an impossibility for me to hold on. And I mean, one of the things that I think there is a distortion of, because I've never experienced it in this lifetime. I've never experienced anxiety, envy, or fear. The fear part just disappears. And so the envy and the envy specifically is something that most people get caught up in, because, well, what are they doing that I'm not doing to create my oneness, the virtue?
Yeah.
And so these are all trappings of the personality. The fearlessness part is a key to all things. When you don't get, fear is sort of like has so many subsections. It's like, oh my goodness. I mean, we can ripple into all this stuff, but the fearless state, which is just being accepting and allowing, is this selflessness. And so you go, It's like, well, how do I get there? Well, Martin's got his way and I've got my way. And, there's a million other ways to access this present moment. It's what does it mean to you? And what is it, the resonation of it being the feeling that you're speaking of? Are you contracting or expanding? Would be basically it.
It's just, yeah. I try to always, when I talk to my clients or when I just have my guided meditation or anything, I tell people that I don't really have a technique. Meaning, it's not that I have one way of practicing that I believe is the right way to do it. Like, this meditation technique you need to do, and then this one is wrong. Instead, it's just a way of understanding what happens behind the scenes, kind of, and then you can do whatever practice you like. That's why I don't try to convert anyone. It doesn't really matter, and that gradually just changes. If you don't make it so personal, I could say I have a trauma towards what happened with my ex. That's all of a sudden a big thing. If I just say, okay, you have a distortion towards that, let's look at that. It's much easier to let go of this feeling directly than going to a shrink and trying to figure out all these thoughts. And like, then if I can figure that out, then I'm allowed to, now I'm allowed to feel good because I figured out that this happened. And like, it's not necessary, but it can be very useful, and it works for a lot of people. It's not that it's wrong. It's just a different way of kind of approaching it. And since I have my way of being brought up and having all the experiences I have, I grew up wanting to do something, wanting to figure something out. So then my practice would be, okay, wait a minute, there is nothing I really need to do, but at the same time I have to do something to be able to not need to do something. It seems like something
Double negative.
Doesn't, yeah, exactly. But you have to put some kind of attention or focus into moving forward on this, I don't want to say path, but like on this, to move on with this. You can't just sit like some people. I'm just going to sit and everything's okay. And then they seem to be the most miserable people who just complain to everyone because they're not doing what they think they should. But actually, it is in a way that's simple. But doing that can be very I say it's very uncomplicated, but it can be extremely difficult sometimes to do, because we have all these beliefs that we are so attached to, and we believe it has to be this way. And if it's not, then I get angry, and then I need to figure these things out first. Otherwise, I can't feel good. I don't allow myself then.
Yeah. I mean, it really comes back to your experience.
Yeah.
So, we talk about all this stuff, and that's why I always get people to experience it to validate it for themselves, however that may be. I like what Martin's saying. I'm going to resonate with, exploring his perception of reality, how he embodies this present moment, because I gravitate to the idea of the present moment of being one with all things, how he says it a non-centered point of non-dualistic sort of state of just there. I like that. Or, Sun Qing is like saying this accept and allow thing sort of makes sense to me, using, realizing that, and when I say not real, it's like you are going to have a moment, or you may have already had that moment, where you tell your son, or he discovers that in the world that's around him at this present moment, he cannot access Kris Kringle in a physical form, in a material form that is not derived from some sort of like a marketing scheme that reminds you that it's the end of the year and you need to embody the idea of giving. Yet I love the feeling that is universal, because there is a palpable state that comes with Christmas. Yet, my children, my eldest son is 12. He still believes in Santa Claus. And guess what? Until he has changed his consciousness, he can experience Santa Claus. He can feel the energy of Santa Claus. He can see the actual visual, palpable state that Santa Claus is there, from an ethereal sort of state of awareness that's still real. Now, I'm not going to go and tell him, listen, we're going to have a difficult time finding this material version of Santa Claus.
Exactly.
Yet
I sent him a letter. Why isn't he responding?
Right. But, that's very palpable. So the energetics are very real. This is where I come across people over the years whenever I'm doing exorcisms, house clearings, all that kind of stuff. This is, as Martin would say, the individual's distortion that brings these entities in. I could go 10 years without ever coming across this evil, low frequency in the form of what someone is perceived as a satanic, a demonic sort of imagery. But this is also part of a duality that this person is embodying and experiencing and receiving at this present moment, and it's transmuting into their experience. And so that will be embodied through their physical tissue, where, my mother, 25 years ago when I was doing a channeling class, that very moment happened. There was like 20 students in the room, and this woman confessed that she was obsessed with wanting to be this badass exorcist. And I'm like, okay, be careful what you wish for. Remember, there are an infinite amount of spirits, energies, and frequencies. And that, the idea of, Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees or any of these maniac Hollywood expressions of like box office hits are created in the seed of someone's unconscious, like in the dark, deep, emptiness that comes from Wes Craven's mind.
I have to say, these are things I'd never even considered. Like,
right.
I know people think about these things, but for me, it's like, what on earth is he on about?
Well, when you come across someone that is talking to you and saying that, listen,
I know,
I'm being possessed, or there's a spirit, or there's things going on. Because I deal with, scenarios of black magic all the time. People come to me because within the Chinese culture, the superstition is very steep. It's very strong. So, you have to also work with this, but everything they're experiencing is their distortion.
Yeah.
And so it's not, it's what they're bringing into their reality, and it's being validated by their very experience. So now it's like, we talk about, is it real or not real? Well, it
doesn't matter.
Real to them.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And I have to ask you here, because one of the things I find difficult sometimes is that since I don't feel so much distortion, it also means that I sometimes don't understand when I say things that are offensive, or that people don't. Because I mean, you react to sometimes when I remember when I say things, you're like, "What you say there?" Because for me, they're not offensive. It's just me trying to
Yeah.
put a form to something. And for instance, what you said about Santa Claus, like that is something that I understand that concept, and I agree with it. But I know that if I say that, then some people can be offended. Now, it helps if you're like, when you're saying it, you're not talking like I knew a lot of monks who did, like, "Oh, you young people, you're not ordained. You don't understand like we do, the holy people. We understand that life is like this," and like talking down to people.
Hmm.
And I really disliked that. I used to really feel a lot of distortion towards that kind of behavior, and my personality simply said, that's not me. So I find it difficult sometimes to know how to talk to people, because since I don't feel it, they can then be, because people have a belief that this is how you do when you're being polite or honest. But that's so difficult. Whatever someone says, if I say you have to sit as much as possible and the world is just suffering, so don't be attached to anything. If I would say that in a center that focuses like on the Mahayanist tradition, where it's more the world is beautiful and amazing, they were like, "Well, you're just dumb. Like, what are you talking about?" They would be offended by what I call truth, and that can be difficult sometimes. Have
Well,
you
well,
noticed that when you talk to people?
well. It's just when someone says the absolute truth, then and my personality gets kind of like, well, the absolute truth is whatever you say it is. It's not the absolute truth. I had this one person on the podcast a week or two back, and they have this perception of how things are constructed, and they're very deep into this karmic model that if you do something, this will have an outcome. Well, it's all predicated on your belief system. This is something that I've been very clear in understanding, that over 30 years of doing this, again, the karmic model only works if you believe it, and the
Oh,
universe
yeah,
will give to
yeah,
you
sure.
what it is. And this is from my own experience, the ancient practices I teach people within Taoism. But then there are people that are, no, the laws of attraction, the laws of the universe are very clear. They're laws. That's
Yeah.
just it.
Mm,
And
mm.
then it's like, this is where I'm like, that's your truth. That's your truth as you know it right now. And people are like, whoa.
What you
And it's
say
like,
now,
yeah,
sorry, like what you said, even the thing when you say like energies can't be described, can only be moved,
yeah.
even things like that, I don't give any thought to that, because
Right,
I don't
right,
know if that
right.
is true. I mean, it makes sense, but I can't say. And if I would do that, then I would have distortion. I had one thing that okay, now I'm going to defend this position.
Right.
I can use it as a place of starting to work with whatever I do with, but as a base of my practice, kind of,
Mm.
and that could be useful. But if you defend it, and that's the problem, people take on these beliefs, and they get so like they dig down and try to defend them, and like it's exactly like this. And I know how the universe works. You don't, and I think it
Uh,
has to do
it-
with, again, with my practice, that when I left, I said I was searching for the meaning of life, and I was trying to figure these things out. And I solved that problem not by finding the answer, but the feeling, this distortion inside of me, this tension that felt
Mhm.
I need to find the answer, that is gone. So that's why I never think that many of the things we talk about now, they're completely alien to me, because I haven't thought about them for years. They're
Yeah.
just they're I understand people want to find out, but if you want to do what I'm doing, they don't matter. Like
Right,
that's
right.
besides the point. It might be
Eh,
true, it might not be, but like that's not what we're trying to do
well,
here, kind of.
I still believe we're on a very similar path in the observer, the emptiness,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Wu
sure.
Ji,
Yeah,
right? So to obtain that, you're still having a perception, even as the
absolutely.
universe.
Yeah.
There's still a perception to be an observer, as we put it within Taoism, first person, third person, no person. That is still a perception of how things are as they are in this present moment. Does that make sense? So
I
it's
think
like,
I'm
even
thinking I
though,
was thinking
even
the last. So go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, no, well, but I mean, we're still, we're all things, and that's the consensus. And how I validate any of this stuff, again, I believe we're saying the same thing, is a feeling, and that feeling is generated an outcome that can be repeatable and validated. And so for any situation, if you're completely void of the humanist experience, which is wrapped up in what we call a hetero action, which you start, you must finish. And this is where, you were on this journey from an Australian. You're on walkabout, mate. You went walkabout looking for the answer that now you don't even care about, that is not important. It's just how you feel. So if you're feeling this weird contraction that some people will attribute to other alchemical
It could be
processes,
motivation or whatever. Like, you can put many
right?
words to those. I just try to
And then
take
it
away the
just
forms.
becomes non-centered or non-dualistic. That's that. I'm free of all of it.
There's levels to that, because there's the oh, it's getting dark outside. I'm seeing my face getting dark. Yeah, there's levels to. There's what I feel on a general basis is very not so centered, but it's still there, and then that kind of drops into the more stronger non-centric states where really it all disappears, and that's when there's a big difference. And that's what I said, like, just recently starting to turn into something else that seems to be completely void of everything. So it is something like you're progressing towards, and I simply don't know what happens when that continues. And people talk so much about what that means and what happens, but if you would actually, if this is possible, what I'm talking about, that would mean that this is a permanent state that you
Yeah,
can reach by taking away all of this. And then
yeah,
would that mean, I don't really know. Like, would you just stop breathing then and die? I assume not. I mean, there's no reason, in my opinion, they would, because it's just the distortion we're taking away. But you would be constantly experiencing the world without any kind of, um, uh, yeah,
filter.
distortion filter. You would just see, like my son watching my daughter poop. Like, it just, oh, this is
Yeah,
interesting. What does this
the
look like?
present, the
It
present
would
moment.
just be that,
Yeah,
and in
yeah.
a level that's just higher than just. My point is, what I'm trying to say is that I don't believe we really experience the present moment. I believe we're experiencing the present moment with still some jitteriness, and that we can kind of dive deeper into that to a point where that completely disappears. Because at least that seems to be how it has worked for me. That it just, I had these states where, like, wow, everything is so amazing. It's like, oh, my, oh, this is insane. Whoa, the world is so beautiful. And then that kind of, because there's a self in the background going, this is so amazing. And now even that is going away, and it becomes less amazing and more perfection. Kind of,
Mm.
I don't really know how to say it, but there seems to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not present moment or not present moment. I think we kind of have like, you could probably make a scale somehow and say, like, oh, I'm not like completely in my mind just lost, but you're also not completely in the present moment, and you have work to do on this path, if you want to say that again. Like, it's difficult when we start saying things like that, because
Well,
that also makes
and
it
that,
worse.
I mean, that's where the I think perhaps you would look at, and I do this with the semantics of things. When people come to me and they've got all this human like experiences that they want to work out why daddy didn't give them
Yeah,
3 cookies when they were 5. And
yeah.
within a Taoist model, we call that a soul retrieval. And I'm not into the semantics of that because it's not real. Because honestly, i can I can literally, you know, punch you in the face and you're going to feel it. And then every time someone pulls their fist up towards you, you're going to flinch because that's an autonomous response that comes with the feeling that moment where even if someone draws their fist towards you, you're going to remember the time that I punched you in the face. Now that healing would come from dissolving the feeling and the emotion that is generated from that very moment. And you go, okay, that happened. Now I can erase the actual event completely because it's only a story. And so, it's a story that you've accumulated. So it can be any way you want. I mean, this is where megalomaniacs always fall. And so people are like,
Mm.
how is it that God could make things like, Adolf Hitler or Mao be actually a thing that,
Yeah.
perpetrated some horrible thing on humanity that killed millions of people? Because the reason that they fell was only one reason. The reason that we're not subject to their very megalomaniac behavior to this day right now. And it's distorted in other forms and other leaders and other people. But in essence, the reason they don't exist anymore is for the very simple fact that they stopped believing their truth.
Did I
So
disappear?
Yeah, you disappear for a second.
Yeah, I
So
think
they
I'm back.
stop believing their truth. It always
Yeah.
comes back to their truth. But in the back of their mind, they started to identify with what they perceive as karma, that there is some other side to what they're doing. They stop believing in the just death and destruction, and all of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have consequence for what I've done. And that's that moment where they fall and everything is unraveled. But if you believe in it, that's the only thing you need to be concerned with. And that's where what is real and what isn't is completely predicated on your perception. And what is non-centric, non-dualistic, non-anything is a perception. Oh, look at you.
Sanchin, can you hear me?
Yeah. You really disappeared. It looked like you
Yeah,
disappeared. It was like
I
it looked
did.
like you were doing shape shifting
I
stuff there, my
dissolved.
friend.
I
It was
dissolved
really
into the
cool. I
ether.
was like,
I think
wow, that's awesome, man. That
that's
is
a superpower.
awesome.
I think it's the universe telling us, okay, they've had enough fun now.
Yes. In closing, I want to say that I believe we're on a very similar path in relation to how we perceive reality, and I think that nurturing our incredible friendship will continue to blossom our understanding of these things at a greater level, or not understanding, just being one with all things. And I think that just comes from the universe bringing us together, and it's just very exciting. Are you there, Martin?
Yeah, I'm back
Y-
again. I'm
Yeah,
back again. I
you
think,
froze a little bit. I was like, I like the
yeah,
smile. Yeah, the universe is saying, "Hey, listen, you got a wife and kids. You need to
yeah.
go and have dinner."
They're
So,
actually going to
what?
they're going to bed now, so that's
Okay,
perfect.
so let me just close with this. What is your definition of consciousness?
I don't think I've ever thought about that. Uh, I even if I would have a definition, it wouldn't really make much of a difference. It's a perfect thing of exemplifying what I was saying before, that those things are just taking me away from experiencing what's happening now. So that's why I never contemplate those things. That would probably be a really interesting discussion of, does it happen in the mind? Is it out in the universe? And my guess would be as good as anyone else's.
It's so interesting because you literally do what I do. I don't think, I just know. So I'm never
Uh,
thinking.
Yeah.
And so it's exactly the same thing. I never think. It's like when I'm cultivating all these things, literally my teachers will come in the form of consciousness of information, how I define it. And I could literally stay on one thing. I could literally be sitting in a space in what you consider the non-centric, non-dualistic moment and just be there. And like
Yeah.
I can sit here right now and I'm as high as a kite from sampling all the energy, sampling your energy, sampling the experience. And I could just sit here for days. If I didn't have a wife and kids,
Yeah.
I'm just here. And it is, oh yeah, it's good to be me. And so that present moment is like we're doing the same. It's like you can't get to the present moment if you're thinking about anything.
No.
And that's
And
part of
even feeling about anything. I think if you
well, well,
feel
it
like,
well, it's an autonomous thing. It's like your blood is pumping, but you're not thinking about it.
yeah,
You're breathing, but you're not thinking about it. That's an autonomous. That's like that life force that we speak of. The universe is making it possible for you to even not think, because you're having an experience in this physicality that's brought you to a point to realize that the present moment is all things, which is nothing. Yet it wouldn't be possible without the autonomous ability
yeah,
of the universe.
something needs to be here. Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
Sanchin, I really enjoy this. It's been
we
a
have to
great
visit this
conversation.
again.
Yeah. Yeah,
We'll definitely
absolutely.
do. We'll get you back on the channel here in a couple of months, or vice
Yeah,
versa. Whatever
do
we're
it.
doing, I
Yeah,
love it.
exactly. I thought about it actually. Someone should come like on my channel and talk about Taoism, because I simply
Yeah,
don't know enough about it.
yeah,
I think that
I
would be
would
really
love that.
interesting for my viewers as well.
All right, I would love that.
For
I would
sure.
love that.
Yeah.
Let's set that up. I'm going to send you my number and everything,
Yeah.
so we
Do
can
that.
talk offline. And I'm just going to put all your social media stuff under this video, and you're just going to share with them whatever it is that you do. And I want the viewers to go and check out Martin's channel, because he's speaking on many things that are very similar to the way we perceive things within the stuff that I share with people. And I love that, that embracing all things. It's like, it's like, yeah, I mean, we could go on. We have wives and children. So
We do.
with that, I want to thank you, Martin, for sharing your time with us today. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu Taoist Master Sun Qing. And I'll see you in the next one, guys.